you to all of you for joining today. We have been very busy here at OmniAir. You'll hear a few updates on a few things happening in the life of the organization, a few upcoming events, and then we'll do quickly our working group updates. And I want to move as fast as I can to our guest speaker, Tim Woods, who is going to knock your socks off with some great research they have going on V2X as well as software-defined vehicles. So if you're not yet an OmniAir member, I'd certainly encourage you to take a look at membership, consider joining. We have a brand new website. You can navigate and learn a little bit more about the organizations, but we have a fairly broad, what I call the OmniAir ecosystem. It's everyone from automotive OEMs, tier one suppliers, tolling equipment manufacturers, systems integrators, chipset providers, test labs, test equipment providers, and of course, our public sector members, both tolling and state DOTs. So if any of the activity you hear about sounds interesting to you, please click on that QR code or reach out to any of the staff, and we're happy to provide you more information. And I would like to welcome two of our newest members. I don't know if they're online yet, but both have joined at the executive level, which means they're eligible to chair working groups and run for the board of directors seats, et cetera. That's Michigan Department of Transportation. And I don't know if we have Michelle Mueller or anyone from MDOT on the call. So Michigan DOT was an active participant in our Plug Fest in the fall at American Center for Mobility. We plan to go back to Michigan next fall for that Plug Fest. They're doing some amazing things in connectivity and automation and electrification. We're very excited to have Michigan, one of the real thought leaders in the transportation world, is one of our members. Other new member joining at the executive level is Vera Mobility. Is Kathy Chin online? So Vera Mobility is just really one of the outstanding companies in the mobility space. They're doing a lot of work with tolling and rental car fleets, as well as some pilot projects on connected vehicles with some of our tolling members. They're going to be participating in our upcoming V2X tolling workshop, and they're really blazing a trail on in-vehicle payments, and we're excited to have them in the membership. Next, please. So we have a few new activities for 2026. We have a brand new working group for network-based V2X communications. That working group is chaired by Ted Sadler of WSP, formerly Integral Blue. You may have heard him if you were on the V2X cohort call earlier this week. Ted has been an excellent partner of OmniAir's for a long time. I can't think of anybody better situated to lead this group. OmniAir has offered certification for V2X OBUs and RSUs since 2017, starting with DSRC, and then moving several years later to PC5 CV2X OBUs and RSUs. We are now exploring how do we carry that trust forward into a networked world where the messages are not going direct, they're going over the network in some form or fashion. And that is the focus of this working group. The inaugural meeting is next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I don't know if Ted is online. Well, I'm sure he'll have a lot to say if you care to join us for that. And if you are not already signed up for it, reach out to Brikenda and she will get you signed up. Next, please. Sensor certification program, that is another new initiative. We are very aware that RF sensors such as CV2X do not operate in a vacuum in the connected infrastructure environment. The performance is dependent on many different types of sensors, from cameras to LiDAR to other sensors, all working in a conservative fashion. There are standards activities that have been happening at SAE on sensor data sharing messages and other things. So we are in a requirements phase for that activity. Nick Hagemeyer of Drive Ohio is leading that. And that working group is actually, for the requirements phase, is open to members and non-members alike. We want to draw in, as we start framing out what this certification program will look like, draw in as much input as we can from key stakeholders. We had over 60 people on the first call last month, and I'm sure it will just continue to grow. The next call is Thursday, March 12th. I don't know if Nick is online, would like to say anything. Well, very good. So if you are interested in participating, reach out to Ryan Hall. You see his email there, and he will get you signed up. Next, please. And one thing that we're very excited about, because this goes to the original mission of OmniAir when we were founded some 20 plus years ago. It's looking at using connected vehicle technologies for tolling transactions. For a variety of reasons, our connected vehicle activities have been really focused on safety use cases, and most deployments have been focused primarily on that for good reason. But now there is tolling industry is taking a hard look at what comes next after RFID. What are those other payment options? And states like North Carolina are blazing a trail using connected vehicle technologies for tolling transactions. There's an SAE standard 3217 and 3217/R that have been published. We've been talking about this in our RUC and our tolling working group for some time. And we thought it's very important to bring together um, key tolling industry stakeholders for an interactive workshop. We're doing that on March 26th in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're doing this event in partnership with the North Carolina Turnpike Authority. If you click on that QR code or you visit our website, you can see that we have an absolutely amazing lineup of speakers from CABS to Indra, NCTA, T-Mobile, uh, Verizon, MasterCard, Audi, Volvo Cars, and others. It is going to be a great learning event, an opportunity for you to weigh in on helping develop requirements for what will be our future V2X based tolling certification program. We're going to make that a major initiative for OmniAir. We have a leadership opportunity. We're making an announcement of that, who's leading that working group at the March 26th meeting. So if you are interested in participating in any way, throw your hat in the ring, reach out to myself or any of our staff. We're happy to get you involved. Click on that QR code to sign up because space is limited, and hope to see you in Raleigh in just under a month. Next, please. Of course, these are just a few of our speakers. I won't belabor this. I would say that Lev Pinellas of Toll Insights is going to provide some really interesting overview of innovation and tolling and what's worked and what hasn't worked over the as we start thinking about how do we scale this, how do we scale deployment of this. And we have a special speaker from North Carolina DOT's Division of Aviation talking about advanced air mobility programs. North Carolina is leading the way in that as well. And then I'll just very quickly show you the speakers for the next, please, for the two panels that we have. Lori Brady, who's online now, Brad Sturts, Daniel Garrido, and Travis. We'll be talking about the V2X Direct tolling pilot, which is happening on the 540 in the Raleigh area, and then statewide, as well as in Charlotte. And then statewide, there's an in-vehicle payment pilot, and we have North Carolina Turnpike, Verizon, Volvo, and T-Mobile all talking about that. So if you're interested in any of this, do sign up. Next, please. And of course, we have what will now be our 18th OmniAir Plugfest. It is hard to believe, but I think this will be the best one yet. We are going to the great state of Maryland, Baltimore, Charm City as it's known in these parts for our next OmniAir Plugfest, the week of June 1st through the 5th. It is being hosted by Johns Hopkins University on their Mount Washington campus. It's a gorgeous facility. You see pictures in a minute. Maryland Transportation Authority, which is a tolling entity within Maryland DOT, is a partner, as well as the Maryland CAV Working Group, which does outstanding events, and I think will enhance this event. And there's no more place that's fun to spend time than Inner Harbor, Baltimore, in June. Next, please. So you can see some of the early commitments that we have for test stations. We have a limited number of slots for test stations available. So if you are interested, I would certainly encourage you to sign up for a testing ticket soon. The early bird pricing expires March 15th, the Ides of March. So please be sure to get your ticket and get that $1,000 discount. We have Early commitments from DECRA, AutoCrypt, ISS, Leidos, and Noblus will be there on behalf of Saxton Labs, operating two test stations. National Institute of Standards and Technology is doing an interoperability initiative, and they will have a test station with their new tool, Microsec, Sasoltech, Waties, and others. And we will have more announcements as we get closer to the event. Please do sign up, and you can see some of the early commitments from device manufacturers, and we expect to have over a dozen of those by the time we get to the event. Next, please. This is just a sneak peek of what a gorgeous facility will be at. This is where all the faculty and graduate students for the data science and AI programs as part of the Whiting School of Engineering will be housed. That has just been a recently renovated, gorgeous space. You'll see in the upper left-hand corner the auditorium. We'll seat 120 in rounds, and we'll be doing testing in one of the suites in a divided set of rooms, and it's just a fantastic facility. We will have space for some demos. As we are partnering with the university, we're going to have poster sessions from some of the graduate students, not just of Johns Hopkins, but some of the other Maryland universities that are partnering with us on this event. And we're very excited about that, and hope you can be part of it. Next, please. This is just a couple of the other rooms when we did a site tour last week, and just once again, just gorgeous facilities for bench testing. We're really looking forward to that, and we are in communications with Morgan State University about possibly using their outdoor CVDX test bed for field testing. Next, please. In addition to the Plugfest and the workshop and demos that we have planned, we are doing something new for the very first time. OmniAir is sponsoring a hackathon for students. Teams of graduate and undergraduate students will be working on a problem. We'll have an announcement on this shortly. It is going to be focused on misbehavior detection for V2X devices. Testing hackathon team activities will be happening all the way up to leading up to Plugfest, and then there will be some testing happening that week. Johns Hopkins, Morgan State, University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and UT Knoxville are signed up in addition to University of Maryland. So really, really excited about that. Looking forward to a great event. Next, please. And of course, Plugfest is just a lot of fun. It is a collaborative environment where people can kind of work out the kinks on their devices, have technical learning sessions twice a day. We'll do 30-minute deep dives into standards and test tool activities. We'll have opportunities for hands-on learning, and we hope that the Plugfest improves the performance of devices as well as test equipment providers and laboratories that participate. It's our way of helping the industry move forward, and if you've not participated in one or just curious about it, reach out to any of us and we're happy to talk to you about it. Next, please. So we're going to move quickly through our working group updates. I'm going to ask Randy or Shaquille to come online and provide just a quick rundown of some of the things happening in our working groups, and then we'll introduce our guest speaker.
Good morning.
Floor is yours,
So,
sir.
so here are some of the working group updates. There's no document in 30-day IP review. The 764B document completed its 30-day IP review, and I don't believe we received any comments, so it is ready for the next steps. For the technical working group, we had 2 or 3 meetings last month. The main discussion topics included SLSS and if devices are ready for SLSS testing. We were not able to find any devices for SLSS testing, so if anybody on this call has any device which is ready for SLSS, please let us know and we will include those in the upcoming Plugfest testing. We also discussed what kind of applications which needs to be tested for the Plugfest. Discussed a new sub-working group to be created for V2X tolling and how we will go about creating that test cases for V2X tolling. Another topic of discussion was PoE standard and any need for traffic control cabinets upgrades, as more power requirements may need to upgrade the PoE switches, but we found out that once the device manufacturers install radar, LiDAR cameras, which require more power, they also install new PoE switches, so this may not be a huge issue going forward. The next meeting is Tuesday, March 10th at 12 p.m. The sensor certification requirements working group had its first meeting. As Jason mentioned, this is a brand new working group focused on J3224 standard for SDSM messages. Discuss the initial steps for the development of requirements for different vehicle types, for example, vulnerable road users and emergency vehicles. The next meeting is on Thursday, March 12th at 3 p.m. The tolling and emerging payments working group discussed the CISC tool performance and any issues related to the testing and certification. And we also discussed the size of the test report which comes out from that tool, because that report can be huge, 200 to 300 pages, and we were looking for any ideas to reduce the size of that test report. The next meeting is on Monday, March 2nd at 3 p.m. Next slide, please. The certification policy working group, the next nav was the topic of discussion. There is a petition submitted by NextNav which may disrupt IO's tolling activities. NextNav is trying to reclassify the 900 megahertz band. So IOs are actively working with FCC and other means to counter that change. I mean, if that petition goes through, that it will make it hard for the IOs to work their day-to-day activities. They may have to recertify their devices for the new frequency band. So that's an issue. So certification policy working group is actively looking into this issue going forward, and I'm sure they will be talking about this in the next working group meetings. The next meeting is on Wednesday, March 11th at 2 p.m. The cybersecurity working group, we already talked about the 764B document, which completed its IP review and is now ready for board review. There is another test document which is ready for testing at the Spring Plug Fest, and it is 763A, which is misbehavior reporting. The 748 document, version 853, is also approved. This document provides instructions for security certificate downloads. Lastly, as Jason mentioned, that the working group is actively working with universities in the Baltimore area to create demos for the upcoming PlugFest. So that was also discussed, and this is going to be ongoing topics for the cybersecurity working groups, talking to the universities in upcoming
So
meetings.
Shaquille, thank you very much for the updates. At the risk of putting somebody on the spot, Brian Romansky, would you be available just to speak very briefly about what we're planning for the hackathon and the problem statement that you and the cybersecurity working group have put together?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So this has evolved a bit. I mean, it's the first time we've tried to coordinate something like this. I would say what we plan to have in place right now is a little less of a real-time hackathon, more of a hacker demo. So we are encouraging teams to pick a V2X use case, develop a type of misbehavior, and also demonstrate a countermeasure that can prevent that misbehavior. And so at the Plug Fest, they will come ready to demonstrate, show off what they've been able to do. So we, in theory, we'll see a variety of different use cases, very different types of misbehavior. I'll be giving them feedback on their creativity and the cleverness of the misbehavior and the countermeasures that they propose. So it should be, informative. It should teach us a little bit about how students who, approaching this fresh with new ideas, think about the V2X messages that we've come to rely on and assume are, stable and reliable. I think we might learn a few things about how they could be disrupted and maybe some techniques to prevent that from happening. So looking forward to that and think we're all going to learn a lot. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. All right. I think that may be it for our working group updates. I am very pleased to welcome our guest speaker, Tim Woods from Poco Labs. I'm going to ask Tim to turn his camera on and put up his slides and go ahead and share those. Tim is a founding partner of Poco Labs with over 25 years of experience. Poco Labs is a Michigan-based product development and consumer research company. He is also the managing director of the Future Mobility Collaborative, which was formerly the Autonomous Vehicle Alliance. He presented some research on consumer adoption of V2X at our September Board of Directors meeting and knocked everybody's socks off. And so we're so excited to hear about a little bit about that, as well as his upcoming research on software-defined vehicles. So I think I'm looking forward to this, and please prepare any questions you have, put those in the chat box, because I'm sure Tim will be eager to answer those. Mr. Wood,
Thank you, Jason. Thank you,
floor is
thank
yours,
you.
sir.
Can everyone hear me and can everyone see my screen?
We can see your screen. Yes, sir.
Wonderful. So first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to come on and talk to you guys. First of all, I want to applaud you for all of the enabling work that you're doing. It's fantastic and it's extremely exciting. And it's so relatable to what we have been working on for the past several years around V2X and where we're going with software-defined vehicles, the research. Which is going to have a very strong consumer focus. So, that I was trying to think about this when Jason, you and I spoke about this, about how do we connect these things, right? Laying the groundwork for a systems approach, a system of systems approach to mobility. So with that said, just real quick on us, we're Poco Labs is a product design firm. We do a lot of consumer focused research, market research, and strategy. But the real basis behind the work that we've been doing for over the last 20 years in particular is collaborative type of work, collaborative and connecting different companies together. This is just a real quick slide of who we have done work for and who we are currently doing work for in different ecosystems. But let me get into the kind of the how we got here, right? Laying the groundwork for where we're heading next. So we did have that wonderful opportunity at the board meeting last September to present the V2X consumer research, which hopefully all of you have a copy of. And if you don't, I will make sure that you get a full copy of it. It was work that was done for SAE and MCity, and it was with the intent of making it completely public. But where we started with this was a piece of research that was conducted by the AVA in 2022 that was on the future of infrastructure. And the reason we did that piece of research was because we were focusing on the bipartisan infrastructure bill and what that was really going to mean. We knew that we were going to be filling potholes and fixing bridges and things like that, but we also knew that we were going to be spending a lot of money on technology and implementations around V2X and testing and that sort of thing. And we wanted to really understand what did that really mean. That easily led us into a piece of research and pointed us in the direction of doing V2X stakeholder research. Now, the stakeholders that we're referring to here were state DOTs, technology companies, public assets like fire departments, airports, things like that. We had amazing conversations with LAX and with Blaine Leonard, and the list goes on, and the technology companies around this. When we got through with the stakeholder research, we formed this hypothesis around safety and efficiency being an enabling platform, a scalable enabling platform that would allow OEMs and tier ones to do some interesting things around new user experiences and monetization and revenue sharing. That hypothesis that we developed needed to be tested with consumers. And the first thing that we typically do at Poco Labs is we do a deep qualitative piece of research. So we did that in the summer of 2024. And we went into this with use cases that we developed from the conversations with the stakeholders. And we went in and we talked about safety, we talked about efficiency, we talked about transaction. And I will never forget the moment that we were in the middle of that research. These were 90-minute conversations with consumers. We, of course, telling them what V2X actually meant, sharing use cases with them, and getting into deep conversations with them. And I'll never forget walking into the hallway, and one of our members at the time, and it was a collaborative piece of research then, said to us, and it was a tier one, said, "This is all great. This is all wonderful information. But until somebody does a quantitative piece of research with consumers, nobody's going to do anything with this great information." So, taking that into account, we went back. We did a little bit of a back analysis between what we were finding in the consumer qualitative research and the stakeholder research and what we heard in the initial future of infrastructure research. And we went into a consumer quantitative piece of research. Now, this was the research that was fully funded by SAE and MCity with the intent to make it completely open in the public domain. And this is what we presented to your board in September of last year. The response to this piece of research has been, quite frankly, in the 30 years that I've been doing research, the most overwhelming. I am going to be giving tomorrow my 50th presentation to a large OEM at a global level. Will be happening tomorrow. So they can ask questions and we can go into this. But 50 presentations on the V2X consumer quantitative research. Now, we know that this is not the end of this V2X story. And we realize that this is kind of a three-legged stool, right? So we are now in the middle, in the process right now of doing our V2X commercial fleet research. And this is so important because we're going to be talking with, this is again, deep qualitative research. We're going to be talking with commercial fleet managers. We're going to be talking with drivers. We're going to be talking with others to kind of round out this discussion, but it is completely focused on V2X and commercial fleet. What our conversations have been with the USDOT, NHTSA, and FHWA is that they would very much like us to do a back analysis. Once we understand what the sweet spots are on the use cases around commercial fleet with V2X, they would like us to do a back analysis with the consumer and stakeholder research. And this is extremely important to them because once we kind of understand, we can kind of cross tab these and we can look at what are the sweet spots for these use cases? What would benefit us the most? What would have the greatest impact from a funding perspective, from a testing perspective, from a piloting perspective? So we will be doing that at the back end after we produce the commercial fleet research report, which will be kind of held in embargo for about 6 months. But we will be taking that research and doing the back analysis with the consumer and the stakeholder research. And we'll be sharing that with USDOT. And we're very, very, very excited about that. And I hopefully will come back in September of this year, if I'm allowed, Jason, and I will be giving a report out on that V2X commercial fleet, or one of my team members will.
We look forward to
So where does this take us? What is so interesting about this is that as we kind of moved through all of this research, we started to see this kind of pattern forming as we start to talk about mobility as a system, right? This idea that we don't think about the hardware, right? And what I mean hardware, the vehicles, right? Separate from the infrastructure, separate from opportunities in real time in the real world, right? That when we start to think about mobility as a system, we start to have the opportunity to maximize safety and efficiency across the entire ecosystem, right? And this is important because what's really interesting when you think about SDVs, right? The analogy that I'll make here is that we're moving away from an architecture in the vehicle that is multiple ECUs, right? That are doing individual jobs, and we're moving to a more defined software architecture that links all of those things together. That is a great analogy for what we believe is going to be happening around the mobility ecosystem, right? So this kind of system of systems approach. And we're seeing now light bulbs going off at the USDOT level, and at others. ITSA, Michelle I hope I'm saying her last name correctly here, has been doing several posts as of late related to this. And it is related to a request for information. This was, I don't know if all of you saw this, but this came out on February 4th. This idea that the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Research and Technology has requested information research to support establishing a national strategy for transportational digital infrastructure. I'm sure you're all aware of this. Um, this is so important to us at the FMC that we have asked our board to release all of those previous pieces of research in their entirety for this effort. We think that it's extremely important. This is a phenomenal first step. We know, no pun intended, we have a long road in front of us, but this national strategy is extremely needed. In fact, what we've been seeing happening with the US DOTs starting to coordinate their efforts is warming the hearts of, I think, of everyone. These are not disparate efforts anymore. These are going to be collaborative and coordinated in effort. So, with that said, this kind of takes us into what we believe beyond what we're doing with Vita commercial fleet, kind of our next piece of research. And this is what we're hoping to launch in the first quarter of this year. So, um, when we talk about software-defined vehicles, and this actually came from discussions with General Motors, with Magna International, with Denso, with State Farm Insurance. These are our FMC members. Um, what is the human element here around a software-defined vehicle? What does it actually mean? What are the value propositions? What are the use cases that resonate the most, right? So over a century, the value of the automobile has always been defined by its mechanical prowess, right? Horsepower, torque, all those things. But what does it mean when you can move into a vehicle that can actually improve, not degrade the experience over time of vehicle ownership, right? This ability to improve that relationship with the consumer over time, to improve the efficiency, safety capabilities, that sort of thing of the vehicle itself. So all of those experiences, when we start to talk about AI and we start to talk about all of these other enabling technologies, can move with the consumer to their next vehicle, right? So this piece of research is going to be focusing on what is the human element here of the software-defined vehicle by exploring how technology can bridge the gap between complex engineering and the person behind the wheel, right? The problem here is for over a century, automotive value was frozen at the point of sale by its mechanical prowess, right? As the industry shifts towards SUVs or smartphones on wheels, a critical gap has emerged. Vehicle technology is evolving faster than our understanding of the driver. So the objectives here are to explore the fundamental human motivations and needs that drive consumer desire for a vehicle that continuously updates and interacts with their digital lives. Evaluate how effectively AI and AI can serve as in-situational instructors to explain complex vehicle capabilities exactly when they are needed during a drive. We've been having this conversation with our members for the last 10 years, which is we call relevance in real time. The idea that we can bring things to the customer in the vehicle that are relevant in the moment when they are most needed, right? And then to quantify the relationship between real-time software-driven education and the levels of consumer trust in the vehicle's automated and digital systems, and determine which AI-led teaching moments provide the highest perceived value to the consumer, justifying the industry's shift from mechanical to software-driven identities. Now, this goes well beyond just safety and efficiency. This moves into transaction. And it is very much aligned with what we were seeing from consumer reactions with the Vita research that we had done. So why consumer perceptions is a new performance metric here? In the era of traditional manufacturing, consumer feedback often arrives too late to influence a vehicle's 5-year development. Hopefully it's shorter than that now, but with SDVs, the relationship is constant. It is vital to capture consumer opinions for several reasons. One of those is bridging the awareness gap, right? Current research indicates that while OEMs are excited about zonal architecture, most consumers only care about tangible benefits, right? Like heated seats or navigation. We like to look at the opportunity around SDVs as creating, when you're connecting all of these things into one architecture, is the compound opportunities that happen when we do that, right? The ability to bridge those gaps. And what does that mean overall when we start to talk about mobility as a system? When that vehicle in real time starts connecting with the real world around it, the infrastructure around it. We also want to talk about the subscription fatigue risk. Many SDV business models rely on subscriptions without direct consumer insight, brand risk, alienating drivers by putting essential features behind paywalls that users perceive as exploitative rather than value added, right? Well, how can we get past that? Trust and autonomy and privacy. As vehicles become data collecting hubs, consumers' anxiety about cybersecurity and data privacy is at an all-time high. Researching consumer sentiments helps OEMs design privacy by design. So understand consumer awareness and expectations around SDVs and identifying the fundamental expectations and perceived benefits from the consumer perspective. So key focus areas, and I'm not going to belabor this, are general awareness and understanding, desired future experiences, kind of what are the use cases associated with these things, how can we create frictionless experiences for the consumer that are seamless and effortless in their interactions with the vehicle itself, perceived value and concerns, and then long-term customer loyalty. I think this is extremely important to know and understand and what its potential impact could be. Now, we know that this is a huge, broad subject, but this is kind of the things that we tend to tackle right at first. And that's why we always do deep qualitative research before we move into quantitative research, right? We want to inform the process before we start asking the questions at a quantitative level. So what we're hoping to do here with this research is to go into probably deep 90-minute conversations with individual consumers, kind of sharing with them, expressing them what the capabilities of what an SDV can and do, sharing specific use cases with them, and then getting into deep conversations related to those different use cases to understand, are there value propositions there? Now, that is going to kind of be this is the methodology that we're looking at. We're moving past this here, guys, from when we actually wrote this deck. But we want to identify high value aha moments around these capabilities and what is the potential impact? How can we accelerate trust and adoption of advanced vehicle technologies and a kind of a stronger brand loyalty and sustainable software-driven revenue models associated with this? Now, I'm not going to get into the next conversation, but I want you to understand, if we haven't already made this clear, how iterative our research is. Once we complete this SDV research, the next thing that we're going to be going into, and I'm not going to go through this in detail, but we can, Jason, supply you with this deck, and you can read through this at your leisure. If you have any questions, more than happy to answer them. But what we want to get into is in something we call Teach Me, which is in-vehicle feature discovery that will lean heavily into AI and AR. And this is the idea that we are moving beyond the owner's manual. We are moving into an era where we can relevantly, in real time, share features that consumers have. We know and understand that the model currently, as it states, is imperfect. That when consumers go home with their vehicle, many of them do not know and understand the full features capability of what their vehicle can do. And how can we change that dynamic with consumers in the future? But we want to do the SDV research first. We want to inform this piece of research with the outcomes of the software-defined vehicle research. So, with that said, and I know we have some time left, yeah, I hope we do, be more than happy to answer any questions related to this. I will tell you before we get into that we have commitments for this next piece of research already from General Motors, from State Farm, from Magna International, and Denso. We are looking for additional partners. We are talking with telcos. We are talking with a host of other tier ones and OEMs related to this, and enabling technology companies we would love to invite to the table for this research. But I'll leave it at that, Jason, and we can take it from there.
Well, Tim, thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic and very efficient use of time. So I'm sure that you've kind of engendered some questions. I encourage everybody, if you have questions, put those in the chat box. You see we have a couple, but I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative and start with my own. So just thinking about this transition to software-defined vehicles, what do you think is the best near term outcome for OEMs and for consumers of the transition, and then what may be a little bit overpromised and is not quite there yet. And I know it can be, you have to carefully word this, so use your diplomatic skills.
Yes. Well, let me answer that by telling you about the conversation that we had last November at the FMC, which is, and I think that this is very common for a lot of folks who may be on the call, which is, what the hell does this mean? Right? What does a software-defined vehicle mean? And we know that we're kind of launching into this, right? Engineering groups are working hard, right, to make this happen. We understand kind of the intrinsic benefits of doing this, right? The ability to remotely monitor, to kind of from an engineering perspective, to understand what diagnostics could help improve the vehicle experience, right, from an engineering standpoint. But what we realized in that conversation in November is nobody's really, in the same way that nobody had ever asked any consumer about Vita X, right, and what could potentially mean in their lives. I don't think anybody at this point in time has really gotten into the depth around SDVs. And what we have done is we've talked about connected vehicles for a very long time, right? And OEMs have talked about, oh, I want to monetize the connection, right? I want to be able to do these sorts of
Hmm.
things. But we have to think of these things, and we're seeing the light bulbs go off much more holistically than we have in the past. And I would beg to say that this isn't just about the vehicle anymore, right? This is about the vehicle's capabilities in the world around it, right? And this is why we need to think about this from a systems approach, right? But we have to pull the consumer value proposition into this. We need to bring in the voice of the customer into this because, quite frankly, they're the ones that are going to be paying the bill, right? They're the ones who are going to be buying these vehicles. They want to be able to understand and extrapolate what that value proposition is and how they can maximize that experience. And to do that, we have to bring into the voice of the customer. So I think that this is our way, baby step of finding our way through the dark in the beginning, right? We know the kind of the initial intrinsic values of going towards an SDV type of unified architectural platform software in the vehicle. But what does that really mean, right? What does that mean in real time to consumers, and how does that value proposition manifest itself?
That's great. Well, so speaking of value propositions, one thing when I think about software-defined vehicles and sort of the future promise, um, is in-vehicle payments. So this is something that's been talked about in the industry for a long time. We think about it from the perspective of tolling as well as road usage charges. But we all understand that there's a lot of industry interest and potential consumer benefit from in-vehicle payments. Can you sort of maybe speak for a second on how the industry is looking at that, what some of the things that need to be thought about for consumer behavior as OEMs start to dip into that area?
It's that's a great question, Jason. So the work that you're doing with the tolling and the piloting is absolutely intrinsic to the success of how we move forward around transactions in the vehicles, right? Because what you're talking about is creating a seamless, frictionless experience for the consumer, right?
Hmm.
And they love that. They absolutely love that, right? I don't have to put another box in my window. This is going to happen, so on and so forth. Now, when we did the Vita X research, I don't know if you recall this, but one of the questions that we asked about was parking, right? And when you
Hmm.
start to talk about parking in dense urban environments, there's a lot of anxiety that rises up with consumers as it relates to that. And I will never forget the conversation that we had with people who lived in Manhattan when we were doing the Vita X research. And we said to them, we put this use case in front of them, and we said to them, okay, this idea kind of relates to this whole idea that the vehicle knows and understands where your destination is. It starts to negotiate with the parking lots and that are surrounding your destination, and it negotiates the best rate for you, right? And also using street cameras through the city, it could identify where there's an open free parking spot on that street. Now, we had
Wow.
this conversation with people who lived in Manhattan, and this was not a pricing study by any stretch of the imagination. This was a value study that we were doing with consumers. But voluntarily, people who lived in Manhattan said to us, I would pay $30 for that every month. Right?
That's
Because
I can see the appeal.
that's why, right? It's because it's frictionless, it's
Mm.
seamless. You're creating this environment in the vehicle that can do this. Now, we could extrapolate that out. When we were in the consumer qualitative research, we could do in-depth conversations. That's why we always start with these things, right? And one of the things that we started talking about was, okay, you're driving on a long trip with your family. Do you decide you want to pull off at a exit, right, in let's say around Atlanta, and but you haven't booked a hotel room, right? But we know
Hmm.
you're a Bonvoy member, and we've already loaded that code. We know you're an IHG, and we know you're a Hilton Honors, right? So can your vehicle negotiate the best price for you for a hotel room for that night? As you're pulling off the freeway, right? Can that transaction be managed by the vehicle itself, right? Can we do that for other things as well? So not just parking, but we can kind of extrapolate that out to other types of transactions that make sense, that are relevant in real time, right, to that situation, to the
Mm.
consumer. So we believe that kind of from the transaction side, although safety and efficiency will be the enabling kind of scalable platform that we're working towards, right, in this mobility as a systems approach, transaction is what's going to pay the bills, right? Transaction is what's going to enable a lot of these things to happen on the back end of that scalable platform.
That's fantastic. These cars run on dollars. Fantastic. Let's take a couple of questions from the chat
Absolutely.
box. And let's start with Jihan Chen from Star Systems asking about accessing the VitaX Consumer Research Report.
VDAX Consumer Research Report is all yours. All you need to do is if you reach out to me at, you can send it to T Woods at, I'll put, you know what? I'll put it in the chat right now.
Fantastic.
T Woods at pocolabs.com. If you do that, just send me a quick note. I will send you the full report because it is completely in the public domain. And here's what I'm going to offer beyond that. In the same way that I made this presentation to the OmniAir board in September, that the presentation I'm going to be making to a
Mhm.
major OEM tomorrow, if you would like me to give you a full report out to your internal team where you can ask specific questions without anyone else listening, I am more than happy to do that. That was part of our agreement with SAE and MCity was to
Wow,
do
that's
that.
fantastic. We appreciate it. We just very well may take you up on that. The one question from Maureen Bach from Oregon DOT about dealer research. Have you done any dealer research?
You know what? Poco Labs has done a lot of dealer research in its past. Over the last 20 years, there have been multiple pieces of research that we've done. I'll give you some examples. Obviously, the buying experience, how the buying experience could change. Um, the most fascinating piece of research we ever did as it relates to dealers was, and then we worked with dealer councils, which was the woman's experience in purchasing a vehicle, which
Mm.
was incredibly enlightening and incredibly painful. And we have done some very interesting research on the dealer side. Yes,
Well, that would be that's a whole presentation in and of itself.
it is.
Well, let me see just if anyone has any other questions, now is your chance. Mr. Henry McDonald from Scotland and Keysight Technologies, are you looking for participation in the VitaX and SDB research activity from the testing community? Keysight, of course, is one of the leading
Oh,
test systems providers.
love that. I think that is the domain of OmniAir Consortia. And here's what I will say. Um, we want to inform this process as much as we possibly can with the research that we do, because we feel that good information lets all boats rise, right? So what we hope to do is to zero in and identify what are the V2X applications that are in that sweet spot between stakeholders, consumers, and V2X commercial fleet, and to be able to look at those use cases as testing opportunities with the community. So moving forward, Jason and members of the OmniAir Consortium, we hope to share all of this with you so you can look at these sweet spot opportunities from a testing community perspective. We would love absolutely love to see these things tested in the real world from a practical application
It's a
standpoint.
great idea. That's a fantastic idea. We'd love to partner with you on that.
That would be great.
Well, let me, unless there are any other questions, let me close out with just one. You've spoken several times about the Future Mobility Cooperative, the FMC. Just tell us a second what that is and how companies that may be interested can be part of that.
Certainly. So we are at our core a collaborative research organization. What we tend to do is we lean into what I would say is pre-competitive, maybe at the back end of pre-competitive types of opportunities as it relates to mobility and transportation. And what we do is we come together as a collective. We come with different perspectives like insurance and tier one and OEM. We would love to have a telco involved with this. We would love to have as many people who exist in the ecosystem together, right, that are trying to move towards the same things to look at what are collaborative research opportunities for the future. And that's why that whole list that I presented with you was all done as collaborative research. Where we're going to next with the SDV research is going to be a collaborative research project because we believe the strength lies, I mean, I'm sure OmniAir finds the same thing. The strength lies in shared perspectives, right? Around
Absolutely.
different topics,
Absolutely.
coming at it from different perspectives. That's what makes all of this richer for all of us, right? It's
Mm.
not just one company going off and trying to figure something out, but they're doing it with their ecosystem partners, even in some cases competitors, because it matters, right? Good information makes all boats rise. And we get there faster by doing it together. So that's kind of the core of what the FMC does, but we do that from a research perspective.
I love that. Good information lets all boats rise. I'm going to use that in the future. Well, Tim, thank you so much. This has been enlightening to me, and I'm sure to our members.